Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. On a chilly November morning in the small town of Maplewood, the air was thick with the scent of earth, a lingering reminder of the previous night's rain. As the sun struggled to break through the low-hanging clouds, a familiar stillness enveloped the streets. This was a town where secrets thrived in the shadows, and the community's small size only encouraged whispers. More than a few residents were relishing the comfort of their morning rituals, unaware that their lives were about to be irrevocably changed. The call, when it came, shattered the calm. Officer Nathan Hale received the frantic report just after 8:00 a.m. A body had been discovered in Maplewood Park, a more secluded area typically reserved for weekend picnics and autumn strolls. By the time he arrived at the scene, the brightness of the day felt painfully distant. A small group of officers stood around a grim-sight, lifeless body of 29-year-old Emily Parker, an elementary school teacher known for her bubbly laughter and unwavering dedication to her students. Her body lay near a gnarled oak tree, partially obscured by leaves, as if nature herself was trying to shield the town from the horror that had unfolded. Emily wore her favorite blue sundress, now stained and torn, a stark contrast to the tranquility of the park that had been her escape. Officer Hale approached cautiously, his heart pounding as he absorbed the details. The unsettling stillness of the scene, the absence of any sign of struggle. Everything was eerily wrong. It was a kaleidoscope of confusion and dread. The small town of Maplewood, where the ordinary mingled with the extraordinary, was poised on the brink of a tragedy that would unravel lives, friendships, and the very fabric of their community. As autumn leaves began to fall, so too would the veil of innocence that cloaked the town, revealing dark truths hidden beneath. The victim, Emily Parker, was more than just a name on the lips of her neighbors. She was a warm presence in their lives. Known for her radiant smile and kind-hearted nature, she dedicated her days to nurturing young minds as a third-grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary. Her laughter echoed in the hallways, like sunlight piercing through a winter fog, bathing the mundane in warmth. Those who crossed her path could not easily forget her vivacious spirit, a beacon of hope for the children she loved. Yet, as they mourned, the townsfolk began to turn their attention to the details surrounding her death. Emily had been planning a birthday party that very weekend for her sister. She peppered her Facebook with cheerful messages and video snippets of decorations being prepared. Friends recounted how she'd invited them over for a movie night the very same week, a quintessential Emily moment characterized by popcorn and laughter. There was no hint in her actions or demeanor that anything was amiss. As Officer Hale attempted to piece together her last hours, he recalled his own interactions with her. Just 2 days prior, he had stopped her on the sidewalk while she walked her dog, a lively golden retriever named Max. The glow in her eyes as she spoke about her students painted a strikingly different image from the scene he now faced. What had happened between then and this fateful morning, when all dreams met and time. Later that day, the town buzzed with speculation. A vigil was set for Emily, a way for the community to come together in remembrance and support. United residents filled the area. But despite their united front, questions hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Why would someone harm Emily? And who amongst them could harbor such darkness? The very layers of trust woven through Maplewood began to fray, shadows moving subtly along familiar streets, hinting that perhaps the killer walked among them. The crime scene. As the cool autumn winds rustled the leaves above, the scene at Maplewood Park transformed into a chilling tableau for the investigation team. Officer Nathan Hale stood at the perimeter, taking in the stark realities of the crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the area, fluttering like a warning banner that something irrevocable had transpired. Behind it, forensic specialists roamed with sterile precision, documenting every detail with mild words that hardly masked their grim resolve. Hale crouched by the oak tree, where Emily's body had been discovered. The scent of damp earth mingled with the metallic undertones of sorrow that hung in the air, creating a disorienting contrast to the vibrant colors around him. Handfuls of fallen leaves clung to the ground, masking evidence that might lead him to the person responsible for this atrocity. Every glimmer of light that filtered through the branches seemed to sharpen the shadows, revealing not only the absence of Emily, but the shadows that loomed over the town. With a practiced eye, Detective Sarah Kim stepped into view, her demeanor betraying the burden she carried. She leaned over and brushed aside some leaves to reveal more of the ground they couldn't ignore. "No signs of struggle here," she murmured, but she was clearly moved post-mortem. Hale nodded, grappling with the horrible understanding that Emily's death was not just a tragic outcome, but a deliberate act orchestrated by someone in control of the situation. Evidence was collected: tiny fibers, strands of hair, and discarded items from the surrounding area. Hale noticed a faint scuff mark on the nearby path. It looked out of place amidst the twirling leaves, and he eyed it, recognizing that this could lead to something. If they searched carefully and approached the investigation methodically, perhaps they would unveil the silent truths buried beneath the surface of their quaint town. The unease simmered beneath the exterior of normalcy, and as they packed up, Hale couldn't shake the feeling that the ghosts of Maplewood would soon come rushing to the forefront. What secrets would Emily's last moments reveal? And would they ring true against the backdrop of a community that thought it knew each other all too well? The early investigation. With the day's sunlight fading, the Maplewood Police Department set up a temporary command center in the back of the station. The air was dense with determination as Officer Hale and Detective Kim gathered to sift through the initial findings of their investigation. The gravity of the case weighed heavily on their shoulders, and despite the urgency, a certain resolve bubbled beneath their fatigue. Emily Parker was one of their own, and they were not about to let her memory fade into obscurity. Detective Kim spread out the collected evidence on a table, meticulously labeling each item. "We should start by interviewing her closest friends and co-workers," she suggested, her brows furrowing as she considered the implication. "Someone must have seen or heard something." Hale nodded, writing down names even as a nagging voice in the back of his mind wondered whether anyone could really divulge the truth when emotions ran so high. Their first stop was the school, a place buzzing with anxiety that seeped into every corner. The principal, Mrs. Jensen, led them to the teacher's lounge. Several of Emily's colleagues were gathered, faces washed in shock and grief. One by one, they shared memories of her, laughter mixing uneasily with sorrow. But as each friend spoke, a vibrant tapestry of Emily's life began to weave itself, the quirky tradition of Friday fun, where she donned various costumes to motivate her students, her unwavering support during tough times, and her undying optimism even when faced with personal challenges. Yet, as conversations turned somber, whispers of jealousy and rivalry began to surface. A colleague mentioned a heated disagreement that Emily had had with another teacher just weeks before a Bitter clash over teaching methods and classroom management. Hale noted the details carefully, realizing that not everyone in Emily's world painted her in warm tones. Perhaps the attack was driven by more than mere malice. With many questions lingering, they pressed on. Each conversation brought the investigators deeper into a web of relationships, revealing layers of assumptions and misunderstandings. As they left the school, Hale sensed the town around them holding its breath, waiting for answers enveloped in the guise of normalcy. The chilling thought settled in his mind: could the person who had taken Emily's life be someone she trusted? As shadows crept back over Maplewood, so too did the suspicion that perhaps they were all involved, now haunted not just by loss, but by fear. The dead ends. The investigation quickly began to feel like a labyrinth, where every turn led to yet another wall. The days stretched into a frustrating blur as Officer Hale and Detective Kim combed through leads that fizzled into nothingness. Each interview illuminated the darkness surrounding Emily's life, yet none of it seemed to bring them closer to the truth. The fond memories shared by colleagues were overshadowed by tides of uncertainty, each telling revealing more potential suspects, but never quite providing a motive. The name of the other teacher, Claire Wilson, surfaced repeatedly during their inquiries. Emily's disagreement with her had reportedly caused a stir within the staff. Hale decided it was time to reach out. As he entered the small cafe she frequented, its decor a quaint recreation of vintage 1950s charm, he spotted Claire sitting alone, her fingers nervously fidgeting around a coffee cup. She looked up, weary exhaustion etched in her features, as if she had been holding her breath since Emily's death. Their conversation, however, delivered little clarity. Claire expressed sorrow, lamenting her fallouts with Emily, but insisted she bore no ill will. "We disagreed, sure," she said, her voice trembling as she sought for composure. "But it was just a professional difference. I respected her passion for teaching." Despite Claire's claims of goodwill, a lingering doubt settled in Hale's gut. A trajectory that began with unresolved conflict spiraled outwards to paint vivid images of a rivalry buried deeper than surface-level disagreements. Yet every inquiry also revealed that Claire had a steady alibi the night before Emily's body was found. Days turned into tense nights as every promising lead became a dead end, leading them to circles of frustration and confusion. A breakthrough rested just out of their reach, as if mocking their efforts. The community's chatter became increasingly conspiratorial. Mistrust bubbled beneath the surface. Friends of Emily began to pull away from one another, scrambling to protect themselves in a time of suffocating uncertainty. As Hale turned to study the details they had collected thus far, he felt the oppressive weight of incomplete knowledge. It was a haunting reminder that in communities where everyone thought they knew each other, real danger lurked unnoticed in the familiar smile. They had to dig deeper. Lives were at stake, and with each day that passed, new shadows seemed to darken their path. A break in the case. Just when the weight of the investigation began to dull their spirits, a glimmer of hope emerged. It came unexpectedly. One evening, as he pored over a local resident had spotted a suspicious figure near the park shortly after Emily's death. "I saw someone lingering in the shadows," the tipster, and Harold, had written. "I didn't pay much attention until I heard the news." Hale's heart raced as he quickly set up a meeting with Harold at the town hall. The old man sat hunched over, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. He looked weary but alert, eyes sharp with clarity. "It was around 8 o'clock, Harold recounted, voice gravelly. "I was walking my dog by the park. I saw a silhouette darting between the tresommion, moving fast. I didn't think much of it then, but after hearing about Emily, it stopped me cold." "What did you see?" Hale probed, desperately trying to rekindle that spark of urgency that should accompany this lead. "Just a figure," Harold replied, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "They were dressed all in dark clothes, and they slipped into the shadows just after I noticed them. I couldn't make out any features, but I could tell they weren't supposed to be there." Hale's instincts kicked in and he pushed further. "Did you notice any particular sounds? Any cries for help?" Harold shook his head, eyes darkening. "No, but there was something off. An unusual tension in the air, I guess. Like when a storm is brewing." With adrenaline surging through him, Hale pulled out a notepad, writing down everything he could. "Did you catch a vehicle? Anything that could help us?" Harold thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. I remember seeing a car parked just outside the entrance here, a dark sedan that didn't look like it belonged to anyone I knew. I could never forget the sound of it, though. An engine struggling. It seemed, bounding back to the station with the details fresh in his mind. Hale could feel the lagging weight of uncertainty toward the case lifting slightly. With the tip from Harold promising to unlock doors, he and Detective Kim began their search anew, racing against time. Armed with a description and a sense of urgency, they honed in on surveillance footage from nearby cameras, determined to reclaim the narrative of Emily's last hours. It was in the mundane textures of that night that the answers awaited, hidden between the darkness and light of their small town, where clarity had been muddied by proximity to tragedy. The spark from Harold's words ignited a fire of resolve. They would uncover the truth, even if it meant shattering the comfortable illusion that had long enveloped Maplewood. The suspect. Days turned into a whirlwind of investigation as Officer Hale and Detective Kim sifted through hours of surveillance footage, piecing together movements from that fateful night. Detective Kim's eyes scanned the screens, searching for a figure that would match Harold's description. Then, a breakthrough caught her attention. A shadowy form emerging from the park entrance, just minutes before Emily's body was found. The wide-brimmed hat and dark clothing blended seamlessly into the evening, but something about the gait tugged at her instincts. "Here," Kim exclaimed, her voice punctuating the silent anticipation hanging in the air. She rewound the footage, calling Hale over. "Look closely." Hale leaned in, watching as the figure loomed larger on screen. It was the same height as Emily, but the posture was rigid, furtive. The figure hovered at the park edge before darting into the trees. As they replayed the scene, something in Hale's gut tightened. The movement seemed calculated, full of purpose, resonating with an unsettling familiarity. "Let's see where they go," Hale urged, his heart racing as they continued the playback. They followed the shadowed figure as it made its way deeper into the dimly lit park. Then, just moments later, a flash of headlights illuminated the Cinethy dark sedan Harold mentioned. "And can we get a license plate?" Hale asked, the air electric with the charge of a potential breakthrough. Kim nodded, a sense of urgency swirling. They meticulously extracted the footage, aiming to capture the plate number just as the vehicle began moving. After painstaking minutes of isolation, they succeeded. It was a petty victory and a calamity of loss, but it was enough to send Hale's heart pounding. As they worked through the plates, one immediately stood out. It belonged to a man named David Reynolds, a local resident who lived just a few blocks away from the park. Hale recalled Emily having mentioned David at one point, an acquaintance she'd known during college, but apparently hadn't maintained contact with. Something nagged at him. This connection was unlikely to be coincidental. Preliminary background checks turned up a pattern of minor offenses for David, including public disturbances and unwanted advances against ex-partners. The younger version of the man staring back at them in a mugshot was unrecognizable to Hale, but the glint in David's eye expressed a strain of unpredictability. Determined to explore this lead further, Hale and Kim crafted a plan to approach David at his home. Every piece of evidence felt like a puzzle rushing towards completion, and every question whispered a promise of the truth. As they prepared to confront the dark specter lurking within their community, the stakes were unmistakably clear. The time for answers had arrived. They could either restore a shattering peace or peel back layers of complicity that might unravel the town's sense of safety entirely. The trial, as the leaves began to turn once again, painting Maplewood in hues of amber and crimson, the air was thick with anticipation. It was the morning of David Reynolds' trial, and the atmosphere buzzed with tension as townspeople gathered outside the courthouse, drawn by the gravity of the events that had unfolded. Emily Parker's face had become a symbol, a reminder of lost potential and the fragility of life, and now the community awaited justice. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was somber. Officer Hale took his place among the attendees, watching the jury closely as they filed in. All eyes turned towards the defendant's table, where David Reynolds sat, a mask of detachment plastered across his face. He seemed oddly calm, a stark contrast to the emotional tides swelling among those who had known Emily. Hale's heart raced with the weight of the truth they carried into the courtroom, his resolve unwavering as the proceedings began. The prosecution laid out a damning case, filled with compelling evidence that outlined David's movements on the night of Emily's death. The surveillance footage played, showing the figure slipping into the park, the dark sedan waiting in the shadows. The prosecution called witness after witness, including Harold, whose testimony carried the resonance of urgency and connection. Each account reinforced the notion of David's potential guilt, painting a chilling picture of the crime. Yet the defense was equally prepared, painting David as a misunderstood outcast who stumbled into the wrong situation quick to dismiss any responsibility for Emily's tragic fate. They questioned his alibi, twisting the narrative like a coiled spring, leveraging sympathetic portrayals of the man who once walked free in a community that had seen him as harmless, even misunderstood. As Hale listened, he felt an insatiable wave of anger rising within him. Emily's life had been dismissively turned into a shadow of character assassination. Yet, amid the arguments and the rhetoric, the truth flickered dimly like a candle fighting against an oncoming storm. In the closing arguments, the prosecution delivered a powerful plea, interlacing the memories of Emily's life with the cruel facelessness that now surrounded her. She was a human being. She deserves justice, and so does this community, they declared, their voice echoing through the silent courtroom. After closing statements, the jury was sent to deliberate. As Hale waited, he felt a part of him cling to hope, reflecting on the countless hours spent uncovering the truth. Would justice be served? Would Maplewood finally begin to heal? Or would the grief linger, transforming into a haunting reminder of what had transpired? When the jury returned, the hold on the room was palpable. As the foreman stood, eyes sweeping across the sea of faces, Hale held his breath. "We find the defendant, David Reynolds, guilty of second-degree murder." At that moment, emotion erupted within the spectator's grief, relief, anger, and exultation combined, cascading in waves of sound and sentiment. While Maplewood would never fully emerge unscathed, the verdict felt like a moment of closure, a sliver of justice that stitched a fragile thread back into the fabric that had been too ripped apart. Hale knew that healing would take time, but for now, they had begun to reclaim their story and confront the shadows that had lingered far too long. The aftermath? In the weeks following the trial, Maplewood began its slow, arduous return to a semblance of normalcy. The community had been irrevocably altered, a small town marked by the shadow of a tragedy that could no longer be ignored. Yet, beneath the masked smiles and conversations that attempted to cover the wounds, grief clung to the edges of daily life, a persistent whisper of what they had lost. Officer Hale often found himself drawn to the park where Emily had spent many sunny afternoons. On one particular afternoon, he stood in the same spot where her life had been taken, where laughter once echoed, replaced now by a stillness that felt heavy with memory. A group of children played under the watchful eye of their parents, a stark reminder of the innocence that Emily had fought to foster. It was both a comfort and a profound sadness all at once. Detective Kim joined him, her expression thoughtful as they stared out into the park. "I still can't believe it's over," she murmured, breaking the silence that hung heavily between them. "The town feels different, distant." "It will take time," Hale replied, the ache in his chest mirroring the turmoil of the community. They had triumphed in securing justice, but that victory came with a sorrow that echoed far deeper than a single verdict could touch. In the weeks that followed, memorials sprang up throughout the town, with neighbors leaving flowers, photographs, and notes at the base of the old oak tree. Each tribute spoke volumes, not just for Emily, but for the loss of a collective sense of security that had once defined their small community. Candlelight vigils were held regularly, inviting residents to come together to share stories of Emily, preserving her memory amidst an atmosphere softened by shared sorrow. As he drove through the familiar streets, Hale noticed the subtle changes that had taken root. People grew more wary. Glances exchanged became heavier, filled with unspoken concerns. The discovery of darkness within their own backyard forced the residents to confront uncomfortable truths, and the friendships that once felt impenetrable began to show cracks. The greatest challenge, however, lay in the hearts of Emily's loved ones, especially her sister Sarah. Hale visited her regularly, standing by as she navigated her journey of grief. Sarah fought against the suffocating weight of her loss, while pouring her energy into a scholarship fund named in Emily's honor. "It's what she would have wanted," Sarah had told him, a flicker of determination shining through tears, "to keep helping children learn and grow." Hale could only imagine the strength required to transform loss into purpose, and he admired her tenacity. As the leaves continued to change from green to gold, and the seasons shifted, he recognized that the path to healing was long and winding. Yet for every tear shed, every candle lit, the town embraced small moments of resilience. In the end, as Emily became a cherished memory woven into the very fabric of Maplewood, Hale held on to the hope that through grief, they might discover a renewed sense of connection. The shadows of the past could not be entirely erased, but perhaps together they could illuminate a more compassionate future. Ultimately, grief morphed into a source of unity, a force that could still guide the town forward, transforming heartbreak into a beacon of love. Reflection. Sitting on the edge of Maplewood Park, Officer Hale marveled at the sunrise creeping over the horizon, casting soft hues of pink and gold across the sky. It was a new day, one filled with promise and uncertainty. In the quiet moments of dawn, he found himself lost in reflection. Emily Parker's life had become more than just a tragic story. It had woven itself into the very fabric of the community, leaving behind a legacy of courage and transformation. Throughout the investigation, Hale had been driven by a sense of duty, a desire to bring justice to a family shattered by violence. Yet now, in the soft glow of the morning light, he understood that the impact of Emily's life extended far beyond the tragedy of her death. The scholarship fund established in her honor, the memorials that dotted the park, and the unity forged between neighbors were a testament to her indelible spirit. Emily had become a symbol of resilience amid darkness, a reminder that even in the wake of trauma, light could emerge. As he took a deep breath, Hale thought about the families, the friendships that had bloomed from this shared ordeal. In striving to reclaim the safety of their town, they had unknowingly opened their hearts to one another, bridging divides that had felt insurmountable. Grief had transformed into empathy, and empathy into action. No longer would they stand idle in silence. They were now defined by their commitment to protecting the vulnerable and nurturing the bonds that connected them. With a renewed sense of purpose enveloping him, Hale rose to his feet. He understood that Maplewood was still healing, still learning, but with each passing day, they grew stronger. Emily's laughter still echoed in the park, a sweet melody that reminded him of the preciousness of life, the fragility of joy, and the resilience of the human spirit. In this moment, Hale held on to hope as tightly as he could. The past could not be rewritten, but perhaps they could build a futurion where love, community, and empathy flourished above all else.